be noted. The Honourable Craig Foss.
Mr Chair. Thank you, Mr Chair. And I am speaking on the Commerce Commission. Very, very important vote and crowned entity, Mr Speaker, indeed. And I do note and acknowledge the Select Committee, who may in fact have missed a... on page 5, there might be a slight mistake in the report there. But however, Mr Chair, the Commerce Commission provides an essential part of the regulatory or monitoring, enforcing a very, very important part of the regulatory regime across New Zealand. Part 4 obviously gets a lot of attention, Mr Chair, and the way that's played out in courts, merits review, inputs review, etc., etc. And I do note the committee did talk about that, plus some other matters in their report, Mr Chair. But it is one of the facets of New Zealand, being a small economy, in some instances where there be one or two large players who can potentially exploit their dominant position or monopoly type position, or perhaps drive monopoly rents. And of course that's not acceptable to anyone at all, Mr Chair, or at least I'm sure that's not to most members in this House. And so the Commission themselves, one of the hardest parts about their vote is actually there is an estimate there and their outputs and deliverables, but it's very hard to estimate the timeframes under which judicial processes do happen. So that does create difficulties for that vote and can provide perhaps uncertainty out there in the commercial space, Mr Chair, because they can allow so much for judicial reviews or judicial processes or to be tested in court, then a review can happen, so they may well cross over into new financial years. So there can be difficulties there, but I do acknowledge they are doing a very good job, and the committee generally noted that in their report here before the House. One point in the report, Mr Chair, that the committee noted is they did ask the Commission about issues around convergence, and particularly in and around broadcasting. And I think that's very wise of that committee, because the challenges of all things governance, and in fact, as mentioned here in the report on the Commerce Commission, is in fact, to put it in a simple way, that bit of glass in our lounges, Mr Chair, that we all traditionally call the TV or the television, actually is only a bit of glass, and although we'll probably call it a TV, actually it can now receive data or content traditionally by analogue, although that's switching off across the country over the next few months, next 18 months, but by digital, DTT, digital terrestrial, or satellite, or cable in some instances, or in fact many TVs now come with either a Wi-Fi or an Ethernet enabler, or additions can be put on, other little modules can be put on. The simple message there, Mr Chair, is in fact the challenges for organisations and entities such as the Commerce Commission, broadcasting, you name it, having to deal with a rapidly changing digital environment under which content can now be delivered by many means which weren't even contemplated when much of the legislation, be it commerce-type legislation or even broadcasting-type legislation, was put together, thought of, voted upon, and I'm sure with the best of intentions around this House. For example, Mr Chair, and I do note again that the Commerce Committee talk about this on page 171, but I make the point that we just have to make sure that we maintain flexibility, perhaps be platform neutral, not only as we devise regulatory regimes and models within this Parliament here, which entities like Commerce Commission look after. But here's an example. For example, on a tablet or an iPad, a person can now read obviously things off the internet, they can listen to the radio, they can watch TV, they can watch a movie, and all of those can be from either within New Zealand or afar. They can be live, recorded, or sped up or slowed down as the user wants. My point being, Mr. Chairman, so much of the rules and regulations which entities like the Commerce Commission have to look after, actually we may have to have a look at some of these models simply because technology and the real world, if you like, is moving at such a fast pace that actually there's grey areas, which the committee did start to have a look at here, of where governance is black and white and where it's grey, and of course sovereignty issues around things that ultra-fast broadband brings upon our economy, Mr Chair.
The question is that the report of the Commerce Committee on the 2010-11 Financial Review of Commerce Commission be noted. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Members, I understand the next entity members wish to debate is Retirement Commissioner. The question is that the report of the Social Services Committee on the 2010-11 Financial Review of Retirement Commissioner be noted. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the Aye. Well, just before we do, I understood. I'm not waiting. You're going to take the call? Darian Fenton.
Right, thank you, Mr Chair. I rise to take a call